Hey everyone, and welcome back to another installment of My First Season. My guest today worked for 2 seasons in Club Med, and his first season was in Club Med Sandpiper in 1993 as a Bargio. Before Club Med, he attended Emory University in Atlanta and has a degree in international relations and affairs with a minor in Spanish. He drove from Atlanta to Miami for his interview, and he was the only one wearing a suit. Gulp. He still got the job, though, don't worry. And how about this? This next phrase has never been uttered in over 3 years of my first season. After Club Med, he moved to Asia and, quote, taught Spanish to Japanese salsa dancers, end quote. Hoo boy, there's got to be a story there somewhere. From Boston, now living in Key Biscayne, Florida, give it up for Joshua Bernstein. Hey, Joshua, how are you, sir?
Hey, Greg, how are you today?
Good, good. I almost want to jump right now into you taught Spanish to Japanese salsa dancers, but we're going to leave that nugget till the end, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, so how you doing? You sitting comfortably?
I am, thank you.
Okay, so as we said in your intro, you attended Emory University, and I think it was there that a friend of a frat brother had worked in Club Med, right? He was a tennis Jew?
That's exactly right. One of my fraternity brothers came to visit on spring break, and we started sharing stories of this amazing place that he had worked. And I had heard of Club Med, never had been to one. And at the end of that week, hanging out with that friend, it had piqued my curiosity tremendously. So during college, I actually ran a business that supplied bartenders to all kind of events and places like Six Flags and hotels and things like that. So when he told me there was an opportunity to actually keep working as a bartender, but go do it in paradise, that was too much to resist.
You thought you were like Tom Cruise in Cocktail or something?
That's what I was thinking. I think that was the image that was stuck in my head.
Yeah, all of ours. Now, when you say you supplied bars with bartenders, does that mean you had to interview people and then test their ability?
Absolutely, yeah. So I would basically find out and develop relationships with the various entertainment venues in and around Atlanta where I was at school. And when they would have an event where they needed to staff it up with bartenders, that was my job to kind of fill that void. So yeah, I ended up hiring most people from my school itself. So people I had gotten to know personally. A lot of them worked at the local bars and restaurants as well, but had to hire a bunch of people, that weren't at the school. And so I had kind of been through the process they were about to put me through when I went down for the interview at Club Med. Although the only major difference being, I really just didn't know much about Club Med when I went down to talk to them in Miami.
Yeah, and like I said, you drove. Okay, not many people drive, and you did this on your own dime. And can I ask you why you wore a suit?
Yeah, I just had always been in the position where you went to an interview in a suit. That's just kind of what I did. So all throughout university, I was working. I stayed in Atlanta, most of the summers working internships and jobs. And that was just, in my mind, interview equaled suit. You show up, looking your best. And so I did. And some of the responses were kind of funny when I walked into the office there. As you have pointed out, I may be one of the few or only people that didn't get the memo before the interview that wasn't the dress code.
Yes, and I'm guessing you were the only one there. Yes, wearing a suit.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, no, you're right because I was an investment banker in Westmount, Quebec when I applied, and yeah, sure, my natural thing was to wear a suit, but the guy that helped me apply said, "Whatever you do, Greg, don't wear a suit." Okay, so yeah, but yeah, like you say, didn't get the memo, but you still got the job. Now, when you had your interview, did they even quiz you about, like, if you're a bartender, did they ask you how to make a Singapore sling or a Long Island iced tea?
Yeah, no specific drink questions. It was, I guess at that time, seemed more just kind of a culture fit. Wanted to make sure that I could communicate with people and was easygoing. And of course, knew my way around the bar, which I think that box had been checked by the fact that I had been running this company for several years already. So it really wasn't much of an interview in terms of asking anything, particularly challenging.
Did you ask questions?
I don't remember.
Okay, so you didn't ask, like, do I have to do crazy signs 4 times a day, or
I didn't even know what crazy signs were at the time. Okay?
Okay.
That was all stuff that I would just be thrown into, when I got that first plane ticket to go down to Sandpiper.
Do you recall? It's a long time ago. Do you recall who did your interview?
I do not.
Okay. Now, how long after the interview did you get a call? Was it days, weeks, months?
So it was pretty quickly after the interview that I got a call, and it will escape me in terms of the exact village, but I got very quickly offered a village, like within 2 weeks, maybe after the interview. But I actually was not ready yet to go work for Club Med. So I declined that first invitation. And then it was in the early fall of that same year. So I graduated in May timeframe. Then it was early fall that they came back and gave me the offer to go to Sandpiper, which was the one that I decided to do first.
Yes, and unlike Tom Cruise's character in Cocktail, he went to the Caribbean. Now, I always like to ask, first season American Geos who go to Sandpiper, were you like thinking, huh, where's Sandpiper? Were you dreaming of the Caribbean?
Yeah, so certainly had that cocktail in my mind and ended up, showing up as what I describe as a northeastern country club stuck on a river in Florida. And but I'll tell you, it could not have been a better place to start off at Club Med for a couple of reasons. Number one, I am fanatic about golf. So to go work at a place that had two full golf courses on property and a third one right out the front door, that was just like the perfect place to start in Club Med. And then the people that happened to be involved there at the time was just another blessing. I was down there, had the pleasure where Patrick Calvet was the chef de village, and then Kevin Batt was making his transition from chef de sports into chef de village. So I just got really lucky, both in terms of the place and then the timing, who was there, at that time during that first season.
You remember arriving your first day or first week?
I certainly do. Yeah, I certainly remember, that arrival and, walking into, again, I had no idea what to expect really in terms of the environment. So it was fascinating, right, to walk into this place just bustling with activity and getting shown around and getting thrown in the room, stuck back in the end of the village, back where the Geo quarters were at the time. I don't know before they closed recently if they stayed in the same place over the years. But yeah, it was great. I mean, it was fascinating just to get thrown into that environment and then very quickly just to try to start swimming and figure out the lay of the land.
Now, when you finally met your chief of bar, did this person quiz you if you knew how to make drinks or not? Or they just, everyone still assumes that, oh, he said he was a bar geo, so he is one.
Exactly. Yeah. You were just, here, go do this, get in line and help out and pitch in. So there was no kind of questioning or additional interviewing at the time. It was more just like, hey, it's happy hour, it's packed, start doing stuff and then we'll figure it out. And the chef de bar, when I first arrived, was a gentleman by the name of Alain, who then a couple of months after I left ended up going over to Ibiza, I believe was the village over there. So after a couple of months in Sandpiper, he asked me if I wanted to go join him in Ibiza. But at that point in time, I really loved Sandpiper, so I had turned that one down. But as you know, the teams are great, right? They welcome new people in. People show you the ropes. Maybe they try to take advantage a little bit with some pranks. For me, that showed up in the form of Village. I remember clearly one of the golf geos named Pierre told me, oh, you're in the bar. You don't have to show up for Village. You guys don't have to do that. So, of course, I skipped that the first day. And I believe it was Kevin Batt that took me aside and chewed me out for a little while after that.
Wait, I'm confused. What happened? Like you did do Village or you didn't?
I was told I didn't have to show up.
Oh, okay. But you did.
Okay. But I did, yeah. So I just stayed in my room. I just skipped my first assigned Village and just bailed on it. And that didn't go over so well.
I would have thought, I could have sworn bar geos didn't have to do Village either. I mean, you might not be wrong here because I know it was the sports team and animation, but yeah, I thought you guys would have been exempt. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you know, the Bargio has a unique, I would say, life inside of the club because oftentimes the hours are reversed, right? When the rest of the club is off or doing other things, we're working, and then when the rest of the club and the Geos are off doing their daily activities and their services, oftentimes the Bargios have some time off. So it's an interesting thing at first to figure out, what am I supposed to do here? Versus when is it okay to just kind of be off and go do my own thing in and around the village.
Okay, so Tom Cruise's character goes to Jamaica. He's making his cocktails. Now, did you have a signature cocktail at all? Or was it a drink that you like to make?
At that time, there wasn't at Sandpiper, no. But
okay.
I'd say the demand was greatest actually for cappuccinos.
Oh, really? Okay.
We happen to be, as you know, with Sandpiper, you get a tremendous crowd both from New York as well as from Europe, and you get most of the kind of the high level executives from Club Med tended to come pretty frequently as well. So it was funny. In many ways, it was strange in the sense that the bar was extremely busy, oftentimes in the mornings, right? Doing that, knocking out the old espresso machine and the cappuccinos.
Did you ever get asked to make a drink by a GM that you didn't know that it stumped you?
I'm sure it happened. In those scenarios, I just ask them what they want. I'm sure it happened. I don't remember any particular incident that jumps out at me.
How long roughly did you stay in Sandpiper?
So I was there for about 10 months.
Oh, 10 months. Okay. And you arrived at what point in 93? Do you recall?
So I arrived in the fall of 93. I'm thinking it was probably around September
Okay.
of 93.
So you also had your first Christmas and New Year's then at
Yep,
Sandpiper.
first Christmas and first New Year's at that point in time. And as you said earlier, Sandpiper was it was an amazing place at that time. Again, I understand for people who had either grown up at Club Med or really had some image in their minds, Sandpiper, was not that. It wasn't this crazy singles village, but I loved it, especially because I was able to get really close with Jack England. Did you have the pleasure to meet Jack?
That name sounds familiar. Is he the yoga guy?
Yes. So Jack at that time was probably in his mid to late 70s. And for the people who haven't had the experience of Jack England, may he rest in peace, imagine walking in for lunch and getting seated at a table, and all of a sudden the guy next to you just starts doing a headstand on the lunch table. Right. And then
oh, really?
Boarding into all the yoga poses, and you strike up a conversation. And then later on, there's a water skiing show, and that same guy happens to be headstand water skiing out in the middle of the St. Lucie River. And again, late 70s at this time. But he was just such a phenomenal individual. In the mornings, he used to teach a yoga class. In the evenings, he used to teach a reflexology massage class. So Jack to me was, such an incredible mentor. And I feel really grateful to have had that time with him. Just learned so many things just about his perspective on life, about these kind of things that now I would say have come into vogue. This is the early 90s, and he's talking about yoga and meditation and reflexology and how the human body kind of works on a level outside of, say, traditional medicine, and way ahead of his time. So it was a really cool experience to be able to do that with him.
Did you say he did handstands on the table in the restaurant?
On the table and anywhere, Greg. I mean, Jack had no shortage of healthy ego. He loved to be the center of attention. And, what I think was so interesting is he wasn't this lifelong, practitioner of yoga. He had actually had a really bad airplane accident in his 50s. And it was really that recovery from that accident that led him down the paths of all of these more alternative wellness types of things. So by the time I showed up in Sandpiper, that was a weekly thing, that the room would be packed and Jack would just go into something wherever he would be doing, some kind of yoga pose or headstand or handstand or water skiing tricks. I mean, pretty amazing guy.
Well, I think I've seen photos of him. Did he also do splits? Like side splits? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. I've seen a lot of photos of him. Cool guy. Interesting. Now, what do you remember about your first season? Like, I don't want to move on to Playa unless we covered everything on Sandpiper. Like,
Sandpiper was amazing. So again, as a bar GO, my days were largely free. So a typical day for me would be to get up at 6 a.m. and go play a round of golf with one of the GMs that were in town. And as I mentioned earlier, it was kind of like this, Northeast country club on a river in Florida. So we would get a lot of people coming in monthly or every 6 weeks from New York, from the Northeast, golf fanatics. And this was of course, the winter time for the Northeast. So I had this regular crew of guests that would come in and visit, and we would just hop out on the golf course. So I would spend probably 4 to 6 hours a day playing golf, come back in, do the lunchtime, crazy signs, sun salutation, things like that. And then we had also a golf cart to sell beer and drinks. So I'd typically head back on the golf course for a couple of hours in the afternoon. And I'd use that time again just to go meet a bunch of the GMs, sell some drinks. And would always have my trusty French book on my seat so I could learn how to speak the language and ideally understand a little bit more of the announcements that at that time were done typically in English and French. So Sandpiper was amazing, in that regard. And then the people were incredible. Again, I mean, Patrick Calvet, if you ever had the pleasure of working with him, just a phenomenal person overall, and an amazing chef de village. Same thing with Kevin Bott. And then just the rest of the GO team was just a really good group of people, both behind the bar and then the rest of the services. So Sandpiper for me was 10 months in an incredible kind of situation, and many people might say, well, you don't know what you don't know, meaning, it wasn't this Caribbean, Club Med experience. More on that later when we talk about Playa Blanca. But overall, the experience at Sandpiper was really just phenomenal. And then if anyone spent downtime there, they also know how great the river is. So for people who loved, the sports on the river, be it water skiing or Hobie catting, again, as a bar GO, I really didn't have to come in and work until 5 or 6 at night. So I would spend most afternoons on the water skiing. I don't know if you ever met Carlos, who was the head of the water sports at the time, great guy from Mexico, or Hobie catting, and where you get a lot of storms that roll in that St. Lucie River. The Hobie catting right before the storms rolling in was amazing. So it was just an incredible 10 months to spend down there.
Did you meet any famous golfers? Did any of them come through Sandpiper at all?
Professional golfers, no. Of course, I was an unofficial golf GO. So every Wednesday we would have the Pro-Am event too, and there weren't enough pros that were Club Med GOs. So I would go play with them as one of the pros each week. So there were some really good quality GOs that were golfers. I don't think any of them were tour players. But no, we never had any, PGA pros come through while I was there.
Okay. And Jason, can you quote from the movie Caddyshack?
Be the ball, Danny.
Okay. Be the ball. Okay. Best golf movie ever. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And I'll tell you, you remember the scene in Caddyshack where he's out in this torrential storm, right?
Yes. I don't think the heavy stuff's going to come down for another hour. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I'll tell you, we had some storms roll through like that, and the course would be closed, but we would have some guests visiting from Japan. And these were high-level guests, the CEO of Sony, the head of this company or that. And they would go out and play in those torrential downpours. They wouldn't be able to take the carts. They'd have to roll up their pants and trudge through the water. And mind you, if you remember, if you've been to Sandpiper, the first hole of the golf course at Sandpiper is packed with alligators. I mean, dozens at any given time, both in the water and around the first green. So these guys would get out from Japan and they would just go at it in the midst of these Caddyshack type storms. And they weren't going to miss, around the golf, just given a little tornado or whatever else might be rolling through.
Nice. All right, sir. Now, before Playa, though, I think you took a little break. Is it true you moved to Costa Rica, Colombia, and Peru? That's
right. Yeah. So towards the end of my time at Sandpiper, I had the pleasure of meeting Terry Drummy, who had come and spent some time with us there. So Terry had offered me Playa, which of course I jumped at that opportunity. And in the interim, between the end of the time working at Sandpiper and the opening of the village in Playa, I went down. I lived primarily in Costa Rica, just outside of San Jose, and then some places on the west coast of the country. And then from a home base in Costa Rica, I'd go spend couple weeks at a time in various countries. So I spent some time in Colombia, exploring around, and also in Peru.
And is it as beautiful as it looks?
Peru?
Well, all of them. I don't think I've been to either. So, but they all look.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend all three. So Costa Rica has tremendous natural beauty. On the west coast, you have more of a Pacific Ocean kind of feel with some great surfing. On the east coast, you have more of a Caribbean style feel, with some crystal clear water, some black sand beaches. For anyone who loves hiking in the outdoors, be it river rafting, hiking through the forest canopies, going to see the tortoises lay their eggs. It's really an amazing country. And what's nice about it is it's so small. You can get across the whole country in about 6 hours. So you can really experience a lot of things in a very short period of time. So Costa Rica, couldn't recommend it more highly. Colombia, again, amazing kind of place. I spent some time down in Cali, visiting some friends down there, which Cali is, again, a beautiful city, especially when you get a little bit outside the city, nestled into the Andes Mountains. Really an amazing place, amazing people there. And then if you go up to the north of the country into places like Cartagena, the old city of Cartagena is a place people should absolutely visit once in their life. And then there's an island called San Andres, which is actually off of the coast of Costa Rica, but it's a Colombian island. It's just an amazing tropical paradise. Again, where it's the tiny little island. You can scooter around it in about 2 hours. And the external rim that you scoot around, again, feels like a beachy island. And the interior of the island feels like you're in the heart of Jamaica. So really, really cool place there. And then, of course, for Peru, to anyone who might have interest in going there, that was really more out of interest, in the ancient cultures. So a real desire to go see Cusco and Machu Picchu and the Nazca lines. And Peru does not disappoint. It's physically beautiful, and these historical locations are just, they're really out of this world. It's hard to describe in words.
I suppose your Spanish improved greatly too, because you get sent to Playa Blanca for the 94-95 winter season, and you got to practice some more. You go from a family resort to a singles resort. Any culture shock doing that?
Yeah, the singles resort was, again, what the image, once I had learned about Club Med, or you watch Cocktail in the movie or whatever it might be, Playa Blanca was, I would call the stereotypical, call it singles resort. I know you spent a season, at least one season there, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. As you know, Playa Blanca is just a magical village, right? You're isolated from civilization, essentially. The village itself was so cool in the way that it was structured, with the central building and then those tremendous staircases leading up to all these quirky kinds of rooms and the cove there. So Playa Blanca, to me, it was heaven on earth. It was just such an amazing place to spend 6 months. And we just happened to get, I don't know if everyone has this experience. I get the sense the more GOs I talk to, a lot of people do, but you end up feeling like, oh my God, we've got the dream team here. We've got the all-star team of GOs for this season. And when those things come together, an amazing village with an amazing team, it really is one of those things, I think, that keeps people hooked and remembering it for the rest of their lives.
Let's talk a little bit about that team. You have Kenton Smith as your chief of village, correct?
That's right. Kenton was the chef de village, and I know you've spoken with some of the other ones. So there was Jason Stewart and now Kristen Stewart as well. Terry Herbert, which a lot of people in the club know as Terry Aerobics, was there with us. We've got Hector Zire, Samardo Klein, who are in the, I don't even know what you call it, the communications room. That basically, at that point in time, right, you were just looking for a lifeline from the outside world. The only way it was going to come was in the form of a fax. Right.
Yeah, so that's right.
Those guys commandeered the communications room. And then I know you and I both share a friend with Tim Ormandy. Was down in the bar. I don't know. Did you ever meet Neil Fraser? Also, he was the chef de bar for that season.
I don't think so. I know you had Big Ed there as well, correct?
Yep. Big Ed was there running water aerobics and land sports. And then, other great people. I don't know if you ever met Sharon Spicer, who was down there, or Lou. And it was just a great group of people, both at the GO level, and then the local staff were out of this world. Do you remember a guy by chance named Chano?
Chano, I do remember, yes.
Yeah, amazing. Just Chano and Maria Consuela, and it was just an incredible group of people, both from the local team as well as the GO team. And then on the GM side of the equation, as you know, at Playa, it was really great, right? You get these weekly charters coming in oftentimes from Montreal, the tremendous Canadian crew coming in there, a lot of people coming down from California, and a lot of people coming up. We had big crowds coming in from Brazil, from Argentina, a lot of people coming from Mexico City. So it was a great mix of people coming out to the village as well.
Well, you mentioned GMs. Let's talk about the king of them all at that village. Was Uncle Larry there when you were there?
Tio Lencho. Yes.
Okay.
Uncle Larry.
Give me an appropriate Uncle Larry story if you're able.
I might have to filter that down to find the appropriate one. No, I spent hours and hours with Uncle Larry. He was such an amazing soul and a person that was fighting tremendous demons as well, as you know.
Yeah.
And what I remember most about Larry is a couple things. One, he would always carry around this little, recorder. And he was always working on a book. And the name of the book was I'll Catch Up on My Sleep When I Die.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. I forgot
Right.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so every time I would see Uncle Larry, there were a couple places you would see him. One would be at the bar, right, greeting you at 9 a.m. when you're open. Another would be at the breakfast at the annex, where we did a lot of the kind of the interviewing for the book that he was working on. And the third place was when new guests would arrive, right? Larry, Uncle Larry would suddenly turn into the world's most excited suitcase porter, right? Because he would wait for those people to get off that bus ride. And remember with Playa, right? People are coming off a 3 to 5 hour bus ride typically from Puerto Vallarta, right? They're
Yeah.
exhausted. They've traveled from wherever they get to, and they hop off the bus, and Uncle Larry's looking to see who he wants to meet that week, and he starts lugging suitcases up to the room and ordering Coronas and carrying handfuls of Coronas. He was such an amazing person. But what I remember most about Uncle Larry was actually the way he danced. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. I just want to interject one thing here, because you said he came to see you at the bar at 9, but when I was there like a year after you, he'd come to the power walk, but you forgot one important nugget. It was the way he was dressed. So he would come to the power walk in cowboy boots, a green Speedo, black leather vest, and bolo tie. Okay, this is crucial. And I don't think he had slept yet from the disco closing. He just wanted to see if I needed company on the power walk, and I'd be, no, I'm okay, Larry. I'm good. Okay. But yes, go ahead.
No, I'd say, and don't forget the headband.
Oh yes, yeah, the thin one.
The headband would
thin,
often
right?
have tucked in it one of those funnels that you could cap the top of a Corona to chug.
Yes, I got one because of him. Like, I wanted one after I did my season with him.
Yeah,
all right.
he was.
Well,
He
like,
was.
are you talking about his dancing where he would slap his hands to his chest and his arm? Are you talking about that dancing, or another kind?
The thing I remember about his dancing, when Uncle Larry would dance, he was just in his own element, and and he would just be twirling his arms around, doing these they almost like karate type moves, and
Yeah. Okay.
swirling around the dance floor. And that was what made me kind of so happy about seeing that was the moments where he was beyond whatever he was wrestling with, and he was just in his element. And so I used to love seeing Larry there. And again, what would typically come after that is I used to run the nightclub at Playa. And so oftentimes what would come after that is, me having to carry him back at home and help him back to the room, right, at the night, which wasn't a thing only for him. That was actually a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah, I can't believe there's any XGO GM listening to this who doesn't know Uncle Larry is. But just for the record, if you do not know who Uncle Larry is, he was a GM that just lived at Club Med Playa Blanca. When Playa closed, he would go live at Cancun, and this is what he did. But I don't know how you would never have heard of him. But yeah, that was Uncle Larry. So no, he was not a GO, but he and when I met him, I think I was sick, right? I got sick for the first time. And then I see this guy introducing himself, going around to all the tables, and he was wearing a white t-shirt. It had his photo and a photo of the trapeze, and it said, "Get horizontal with Uncle Larry." And I went, okay, I got to talk to this guy. Okay.
He was definitely a Club Med legend.
Yeah, he's a character, right? We all like characters.
Absolutely.
All right. So Playa. So you probably had to get supplies for the margarita ride, the margarita walk, the margarita kayak. You were doing all those then, I'm guessing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And either getting them, in village. Some of the most exciting and fun memories were actually when we would have to go out of village and go in, get to the local distributors if the Corona or Sol delivery wasn't getting it on time, and we had to go wrestle up some more beer, some supplies. So it was a great opportunity to get to know the kind of the ins and outs of the areas around Playa as well, which was really cool. And as you know, too, right, you have Playa there. And then in that bay, you had these other great things, right? You had, I think it was called the Mirador, which is the place that they would go to have the margarita walks, right? Where people would go and
yes,
end up. And you mentioned the margarita walk. For those who haven't experienced that at Playa Blanca, I'll set a little bit of stage. So when I was there, every Wednesday night was Mexican night in the village. And as you know, we have these different theme nights. And on Mexican night, it was like this spirit would come into the village, right? Delivered via either tequila or some shoddy batch of mezcal that someone would bring in from the local area. But there was I would only way to describe it is some spirit just kind of would come in and enter the village. And, we would line up and we'd send people right from the village over on this margarita walk, typically led by Dan Beeman, who I'm sure you know as well. And
Yes.
and people would go from the village over to this Mirador. It was a sushi restaurant slash disco up in the hills there. And they would go of a couple of ways. They could either kayak there, walk, or horseback ride. And going over before people had started drinking, it was fun. People had a great time, whatever route they chose to get there. And then you could definitely hear when they left to come back home. And you knew one of a few things was going to happen. Someone was probably going to go to the hospital, right? Someone was going to need to be rescued because they either fell in a ravine or capsized a boat. And without fail, that would happen between the time they left and the time they got back into the village, right? And then dinner would start. Everyone up in dinner in the restaurant would get shots of tequila. And then you would just, it was just a big blur, right? People would just wake up Thursday mornings and kind of wondered what happened the night before.
Yeah, I remember mostly the cannonball contest in the pool after the margarita walk and all that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's talk about that bar because I always said that was probably the best situated bar I'd ever seen. And happy hour, because the village was so small, everyone hung out, right? I mean, it was the event of the day. I think at 5 o'clock when I was there, Geo Nancy was ringing a cowbell to bring everyone in, and people would just flock to that beautiful round bar, right? I mean, it was a great bar, right?
It was perfect for the reasons you mentioned. Yeah, we'd ring the bell. Chana would have whipped up some fresh tortillas, guacamole, and some other appetizers around the bar. And yeah, I mean, everybody came to that bar to hang out happy hour, and it was amazing to have that. And some people I think feel more comfortable on the kind of on the drink side of the bar, hanging out with the guests, this and that. I always felt more comfortable behind the bar because I loved more operating like a DJ to that happy hour and being able to interact with all the people around that. And so that bar was so perfectly set up for that because of that oval shape that it had.
Yes, exactly. What else do you remember from Playa? What can you tell me?
Oh God, so much. So I mean, again, with the bartender lifestyle, again that reversed schedule whereby we were pretty much free during the days and then working at night. So I also too there was a great beer bike. I don't know if you had that the season that you were there at Playa as well too, but I would spend the days kind of driving around the beach, selling beers and hanging out and meeting people. And at nights doing the same thing at the circus show and things like that. And we had an amazing animator that season. Did you ever meet Adrenaline?
No, no, I've heard about him though. Never got to meet him.
He was great. So on a weekly basis, you'd just be hanging out by the beach, and all of a sudden, this guy dressed in this orange NASA astronaut suit would come walking around the corner where the scuba guys were hanging out, dragging this, big parachute behind him. And the guests literally thought that there had been some astronaut that had come back down in the ocean and was trying to make his way back to civilization. And Adrenaline, he played that part so well. So it was great just having him every day doing another thing on the beach. You had him either doing the astronaut or the other thing, he'd go down the beach, which you might have seen, which is the French waiter, but that doesn't wear any underwear, right? So you see this wave of kind of laughter moving down the beach. And so I have just such fond memories of just the daily stuff that was there. And then again, the team that was there was amazing. So Jason and Kristen were there. Jason doing the rock wall. There was another amazing friend of Jason. Unfortunately, Alex is no longer with us, but he and Alex were like the kind of the two amigos down at the rock wall that would get stuff going at that end of the village. And then up at the bar, as you know, you'd have Big Ed, kind of running the show, right? In the mornings, you'd have a group of 30, 40 people doing the water aerobics. And then you'd have Terry taking people out on all of the walks in and around the village on her power walks. And so it was just every day at Playa was, I would say, a new adventure, even though, as you know, in the schedule repeats weekly, different cast of characters, different group of GNs coming in. But the way that Kenton ran the show, I just was amazing. He was at that point in time already a seasoned chef de village. And I think he was the perfect guy for that season in Playa because he knew how to get the GOs to kind of to perform at our best, and therefore make the atmosphere the best for all the guests that were in the village. So I forget, when I first got down to Playa, someone took me aside and they were like, Josh, I just wanted, here's the attitude that you need to have here. This is your house. These people are your guests. Have an amazing life and just bring them along with you. And that was the attitude that we took. So it was this amazing experience each week that it was like having, 600 new friends coming out to hang out our house for the week. And I don't know if you had a similar experience like that when you were down there.
Well, that was the first village I opened and closed, and I thought there was always something special about villages when you get to do that. Did you find that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting there a few days before opening and getting the time just to bond with the GOs was an incredible experience. Again, I remember lots of great games of I Never, Truth or Dare over at that little bar restaurant in the Cove just next to Playa. And having that period of time to get the village set up and start to bond really made a difference in terms of how the season went.
Indeed, indeed. So, do you remember who the chief of sports was when you were there?
Yes, it was Thierry.
Okay.
And his last name escapes me. I can picture his face so clearly now.
Was the outdoor skating rink or outdoor hockey rink there when you got there? I believe
it was. That
okay.
was what we used. We used that for futsal every day. So most afternoons there was a great soccer game that we held back in the rink back there.
And after Sandpiper and Playa, did they get you in any shows? Did the choreographer say, "Hey, Joshua, you look like you can dance. Would you like to do a show?" Or did you manage to avoid that?
Yeah, I actually didn't end up doing any of the shows, except we used to put on a Beavis and Butthead kind of mini show.
Really?
Outside. Yeah, there's a guy named Mark who was in animation, and me, I was Beavis, he was Butthead, or vice versa. I don't remember so clearly. But yeah, we'd put on these mini shows. Do you remember when they used to do the improv shows? Yes. Sometimes it was that kind of setup. So sometimes I would do the improv shows, sometimes we'd do this Beavis and Butthead one, but I never got pulled into the full production. And I thank John Rodriguez for not pulling me in on that.
Oh, was John the choreographer?
John was the choreographer for that season.
I worked with him and Big Ed and Turks the season right before that. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, John, what an amazing person, amazing soul. And he was it for animation. He was amazing. The shows that he put on were really out of this world. And I've got to mention too, I don't know if you ever met, but did you ever meet someone by the name of Salvatore?
Yes. Cortez?
Salvatore,
the traffic Geo, Salvatore Cortez? Was he traffic Geo?
No, this was a tall Italian guy with the hair like Fabio from the romance novels.
Oh no, I don't think I met him. No.
Yeah, he was amazing. He would. I think John had a lot of fun with him in the shows there.
Okay, so do you know if John was doing the Taboo show in Playa?
I'm not sure. What was the Taboo show?
It was kind of like a lot of music by Janet Jackson and Madonna. From that time period, the early 90s. Yeah, lots of Madonna.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if he was doing that.
Well, did you ever get thrown into Crazy Signs? I mean, they didn't talk to you about it in your interview. Did you even have a favorite one? Did you like them?
So I love doing Crazy Signs. Yeah, so I would, unless there was something urgent that kept me from coming outside of the bar and getting down there, I would be out there doing the Crazy Signs each night. And again, just that time period, right before the show and right after the show, because of the layout of Playa, was great, right? Because you're sitting at the bar there, it's packed. People go into the show, people come out, they're drinking, and then you can kind of steer the crowd, into the club, which was just a couple of steps away to keep the party going. So actually, John Rodriguez had a lot of, call it, mini shows that he would do in the disco also at night, which was a really cool setup just to kind of keep the mood and the vibe going after all of the main show stopped.
Yeah. Rest in peace, John, for sure.
Yeah. He was amazing. Really amazing person.
Yeah.
And the other stuff, with Playa that was really incredible was I think the areas surrounding it. So getting to know some of the people that had homes in the hills, those pastel mansions.
Yes.
That dotted the hills. It was great just to be able to go up and have some parties there. And then having the The Bel Air Hotel, in the Cove was really nice as well, because a lot of the staff and chefs from the Bel Air would come over. So we get to know them pretty well. So it wasn't uncommon on a night off, to go over there and have a nice meal at the Bel Air and spend some time relaxing by the pool or doing those kinds of things. And it was great because a lot of the people that worked at the Bel Air got really close with a lot of us GOs there. So it was like this really nice community that almost kind of ran the resort in that cove there. So again, another one of the things that I think perhaps made Playa so magical.
Exactly. Yes. All right, Joshua. So after this season in Playa, now I think you might have been offered Responsab Bar in Saint Lucia, but you didn't think after that season in Playa that it could get any better. Can you just talk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I got offered the chef de bar for Saint Lucia, and yeah, that was exactly what I was trying to figure out. It was that, was there a way to spend another 6 months or a year, in the club, in any club, that could come anywhere near the experience I had with Playa? And at the end of the day, I didn't think I could get anywhere near the kind of the magical season that was coming to an end there. So I decided at that point in time to leave the club, and went back home, threw on a backpack, cruised around Europe for a couple of months, and then I moved over to Japan.
Okay. So you have to break this down. Taught Spanish in Tokyo to Japanese salsa dancers. There's never been a greater sentence ever written. How's this happen?
So, and by the way, that story has probably helped me more in all areas of life than any other story I've ever related. I think it
sure.
helped me get into business school and all kinds of other
This
places.
is the story we would tell at Liars Club in Club Med, where
Yes.
there was one person out of three was telling the truth. For sure, this one was, oh no, he's lying, right? But no, it's not a lie. You actually did this, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I moved over to Tokyo, and at that period of time, right, the easy job for anyone coming that's English speaker was to teach English, right? There were tens of thousands of people that had moved to Tokyo at this time that were teaching English. And I was coming home one day, just walking down the street, and I just heard this salsa music blaring out of this nondescript entryway there. So curiosity got the best of me. I peeked inside, and what I discovered, yeah, it was a salsa dance contest. It was actually sponsored by the Cuban embassy, and the music was amazing. The dancers were phenomenal, and all of the dancers happened to be Japanese. And so after watching this for about a half hour, I was just so amazed by their performance. I started talking to a couple of the dancers, and just the idea just popped in my head. I said, listen, you're so great at dancing. You obviously love the music. Do you have any interest in learning Spanish? And yeah, they jumped at the opportunity. So initially, I was thinking, this is great. I'll have a few, private clients that I can teach Spanish to. But that same week, I happened to get introduced to someone who was putting together an article on language teachers for a magazine that was called Hanako. Now, Hanako was the Japanese equivalent, essentially, of Cosmopolitan magazine. So tremendous readership in and around Tokyo. Long story short, they ended up featuring me in this edition that they put out. So it had a picture, a description of what I do, the fact that I was a Spanish teacher, which was unique at that period of time, and my phone number. And so the phones just started ringing off the hook the moment this thing hit the press. And as you might imagine, there were a few more people that wanted to learn Spanish, but the vast majority of people actually just wanted to learn English. So it ended up just being an amazing marketing piece. Amazing introduction to Tokyo. And it really kind of launched my stay in Tokyo, because instead of having to go a more traditional path to teach languages there, which involves going to some of the language schools that were set up in the country, or participating in a program that was called JET, that would take language speakers and teach them and then put them into rural schools. I basically just had this built-in business that just caught fire from my third or fourth week in Japan. So it was great. I ended up becoming very close to some of these salsa dancers, and it was a great way to kind of kickstart my time living over there.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's go back to Club Med if we can. I was wondering, you mentioned a lot of names, so I was just curious, the people that you enjoyed working with, did we leave anyone out?
Well, yeah, I'll say first of all, apologies to anyone I did leave out, because there are more people that I would have time to mention, and more names that aren't just top of mind nowadays. But in the days of Sandpiper, it was really Patrick and Kevin Batt and Terry Herbert and Ramon Franco and Playa, and numerous other people that were just amazing in Sandpiper. And in the days of Playa, we mentioned a few of them that you know as well too. So Kenton was amazing, Ed Matz, Terry, Jason, Kristen, Alex, Hector, Armando, PJ, Tim, my other barmates, Robin, Neil, and then Sharon, Lou, Alfredo, another guy who worked with us in the bar. And again, my greetings go out to anyone who might be hearing this. If I haven't mentioned you by name, just know you're in my thought and in my heart. And it was just a tremendous experience. So Club Med for me, and I would imagine it might have been for you and many of the other people that might hear this, it was just a real pivotal moment in my life overall, right? To have that kind of experience that is so unique and so demanding in one regard, right? The work schedules could be brutal, but so incredible in the other regards in terms of the people, the stimulation, the speaking in a few languages, the ability to see parts of the world you never see. Just really extremely grateful, that I was able to have that experience.
Excellent. All right. You mentioned you like the crazy signs. Now, is there one that stands out? Because I'm just curious. Like now, when we've left Club Med, we got that one song, and then we hear it in the grocery store or the bank, and it's like, oh, I used to dance to this. And then, do you ever start dancing or singing in your car?
Definitely Hands Up.
Okay.
I would rank as my favorite. And then, I've got a family now and three boys ranging from 17 down to 6. And so I've had the good fortune to take them back as GMs now
Okay.
to some of the Club Meds. And that's just been an incredible experience to kind of, pass down to the next generation the love of the club. So we had a great opportunity. We actually went to Cherating in Malaysia.
Oh, wow.
Several years ago and had the nicest surprise. And that is when I showed up there, Eduardo Rojas, who I had worked with in Playa Blanca, was the chef de village.
Are you serious?
I had no idea he was still in the club or that he would be
Whoa.
there. And we just showed up halfway around the world to be greeted by Eduardo, which was such a great kind of Playa Blanca reunion, as well as a great kind of, I would say, indication of the club and how certain people, build their lives inside of it. So we had the great experience to go there. We went to Guadalupe. And before it closed, they actually took my family about a year ago up to Sandpiper. So it was
Okay.
great to take them after all these years. It was great to bring them and just walk them through the village and to reminisce, about the times that I had spent there. So the Club Med's become a very important part of our lives, and to the point where the kids too, when they hear the crazy signs, if we'll put them on to, it's now passed to the next generation.
Did any of your kids express interest in maybe working there one day?
So my oldest, he's 17 now, would be a perfect Geo. So it is definitely in the back of my mind. I have not really discussed that with him in depth yet, but I would not be surprised at all if he chooses to go down that path.
Okay. This is another somewhat silly question, but I can't stop dreaming about Club Med. I don't go to bed thinking about Club Med, but I have this recurring dream. So I'm just curious. Sometimes I ask this question: do you have a recurring dream where you're still working at Club Med behind the bar?
A few years after leaving the club, I would sometimes wake up with this panic that I was late for a shift.
Yes, same with me. But it's something. There's always something that's not being done, and you're stressing, right? In your dream,
totally.
You can't even enjoy it in your dream. Oh wow, okay, that's wild.
I totally would have that, right? Because you remember, right? The days were long, the nights were long, and sleep was short. And so it wasn't, infrequent at Playa Blanca that I would be in the deepest of deep sleep when I would have to go maybe for happy hour, right, and run the bar. And so it probably didn't happen more than a time or two that I actually showed up late, but definitely for a period of time after leaving the club, I would sometimes wake up feeling like I was late for that shift.
We can't even enjoy it in our sleep.
Okay. Yeah, and the other recurring thing that comes to mind, which has actually been I would say a driving soundtrack for my life. This is going back to Sandpiper. Jack England used to always say, "You don't get old and get stiff. If you get stiff, you are old." And that was something that has driven me for years in terms of staying in good physical condition, because I remember that kind of mantra over and over and over again. So while it doesn't show up in my dreams anymore, it does still play a kind of a prominent role that does show up in my thoughts from time to time.
Yeah, well, the way you speak of them, he reminds me of that famous Clint Eastwood quote when someone asks him, "How are you still, directing at your age? How do you do it?" And he's like, "I don't let the old man in." So this sounds like Jack and Clint were cut from the same cloth.
And by the way, that voice that you just used wasn't so far off.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. I'd never met him. Okay, that's so sad.
Channeling Jack there.
Wow, this has been amazing, Joshua. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
No, thank you for having me. And it's been a real pleasure, over the last several weeks to get to know you some as well, too. I really appreciate all you do here and giving us a voice and keeping this community, together. I'm very grateful to you for that.
Well, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. And again, thanks for sharing your story, and very kind of you to come on. So, and here's where we're going to say goodbye to all the people listening to us. So thank you, listeners. Josh, give them a shout out.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. That was Joshua Bernstein. We'll see you all next week. Bye.